Constant activity. Punches in clusters. Never loading up, touching and disappearing. And yet even in this early phase the body shots begin to register as Borrego sneaks hooks beneath the elbow, forcing Musaev to acknowledge the tax. And when the round closes there is no obvious winner in the emotional sense, but in the strategic sense the stage is set. Musaev has established rhythm and control. Borrego has established presence and inevitability. And neither man has shown anything close to panic, which is the most dangerous sign of all. As the second and third rounds unfold, the fight begins to settle into its natural current, like a river revealing its depth after the first splash. And Musaev's plan becomes increasingly clear. Constant lateral movement, perpetual jab, short combinations punctuated by exits. A style that doesn't seek to dominate visually, but to own the scorecards quietly, and he executes it with the kind of discipline that only comes from deep amateur schooling. His feet rarely crossing, his balance rarely compromised, his punches rarely wasted. But Borrego is not interested in winning minutes, he's interested in changing conditions. And so every step he takes forward carries intention. Every block feeds directly into a return, and whenever Musaev pauses to plant his feet, Borrego responds with bodywork that makes those pauses progressively more expensive. And the fight grows denser in the third, as exchanges begin to happen closer to the ropes. Musaev still finding ways to slip out, but now forced to work harder for those escapes, while Borrego's pressure develops an attritional rhythm, not wild flurries, but steady taxation, left to the ribs, right through the middle, hook upstairs, only to bring the guard down for the next investment to the body. And what becomes fascinating is how Musaev responds not with desperation, but with recalibration, planting his feet at selective moments to fire sharp counters that remind Borrego he can't walk in. Without paying a toll, snapping hooks and crosses that interrupt momentum just long enough to reset the geometry of the ring. And the crowd grows audibly responsive because they recognize intelligence when they see it. Two fighters forcing each other to adjust in real time, Borrego bobbing and weaving to slip jabs, Musaev adjusting punch timing to catch him mid-movement, and although no single shot changes the fight, the accumulation begins to hint at future consequences, because Borrego's body attacks are starting to make Musaev's exits slightly slower, his pivots marginally less explosive, and by the end of the fourth round, the difference between theory and practice becomes evident. Musaev's game is working, but it is costing more energy than it did early, while Borrego's game looks the same, steady, relentless, sustainable, and this is where experience matters, where Borrego's history of long, punishing fights becomes a looming presence, because he has built his entire career around being exactly here, in rounds where the opponent is still sharp, but beginning to ask internal questions. And as the fourth bell sounds, there is a sense that while Musaev has likely banked early rounds, Borrego has achieved something more dangerous. He has forced Musaev to work at Borrego's preferred pace. Round 5 feels different immediately, not because Musaev collapses or Borrego explodes, but because the micro signs appear. Musaev's mouth opens just a bit more between exchanges, his punches lose a fraction of snap, and Borrego senses it instinctively, increasing pressure not recklessly, but deliberately, stepping in closer, living in Musaev's chest, forcing clinches, forcing exchanges, forcing him to hold ground longer than he wants. And the body shots now land with clearer effect, hooks digging into ribs, uppercuts sneaking through the guard. And for the first time, Musaev looks less like a man controlling space and more like a man managing survival. Still composed, but clearly absorbing the cost of sustained pressure, and Borrego's confidence grows visibly, his movements more fluid, his combinations flowing with a grinding cadence that reflects belief. And this is the round where momentum tilts perceptibly, where judges start scribbling less enthusiastically for Musaev, and when the bell ends the fifth, it feels like Borrego has taken something intangible, not dominance, but initiative. And yet the beauty of high-level boxing is its refusal to remain linear, because after 60 seconds of recovery, Musaev reemerges in the sixth with renewed sharpness, legs lighter, punches crisper, as if the break has reset his internal clock, and he begins the round boxing like the man from the opening minutes, pivoting cleanly, snapping jabs, throwing combination bursts that force Borrego to reset, and for a moment, The narrative swings back, Musaev reclaiming the center, re-establishing angles, proving that he has reserves both physical and mental. And this oscillation is what elevates the fight beyond mere pressure versus movement tropes, because neither man collapses when challenged, neither style overwhelms the other, and when Borrego finally lands a heavy shot late in the sixth that visibly gets Musaev's attention, the response is immediate and courageous, Musaev standing his ground just long enough to answer before escaping, refusing to cede psychological territory. And as the sixth ends, the crowd understands they are watching something rare, not domination, but mutual resistance at the highest level. By the seventh and eighth rounds, the fight has matured into a full examination of will, with both men operating beyond comfort, and the physical tells become unavoidable, Musaev's legs occasionally stiffening after exchanges, Borrego's breathing heavier, though his forward motion never ceases, and the tension escalates because now every clean shot feels like it could tip the balance, and in these rounds, Borrego's identity asserts itself most forcefully, pressing, cutting off angles with improved anticipation, landing body shots that force Musaev to clinch more frequently, while Musaev counters with sharp bursts that remind everyone why he remains so dangerous even under duress. And one of the most psychologically charged moments occurs when Musaev lands a clean right hook late in the eighth, a punch that would discourage many fighters. And Borrego responds not by retreating, but by tapping his chin, a subtle but powerful message that resonates loudly in the arena. Because this is not bravado, but strategy. A declaration that Musaev will have to sustain excellence, not flash it. And yet Musaev does not unravel, instead answering with composure, continuing to touch and turn, slipping combinations even as fatigue mounts. And what becomes evident is that both men are fighting not only each other, but the limits of their preparation. Borrego trusting his pressure to crack something late, trusting his conditioning and discipline to carry him through moments of discomfort, and the eighth closes with neither man clearly in control, the scales balanced precariously, setting the stage for a tense final act where every decision will be scrutinized. The ninth and 10th rounds unfold, with the weight of the scorecards hanging invisibly over every exchange, and Musaev understands this reality, beginning the ninth with renewed urgency, moving sharply, punching in volume, forcing Borrego to reset repeatedly, while Borrego, true to form, refuses to abandon the body, landing heavy shots whenever he closes distance. The fight becomes a series of fleeting advantages rather than sustained control. Musaev stealing moments with precision, Borrego stealing momentum with force, and as they enter the 10th, there is no illusion that this is settled. Both men rising for the final 3 minutes, knowing that the fight may well be decided here, and Musaev responds with his most disciplined boxing of the night, circling, touching, frustrating, turning Borrego repeatedly, landing combinations just long enough to score before escaping. And Borrego, sensing time slipping, increases urgency, swinging heavier, stepping faster, but occasionally overreaching as Musaev's movement forces him to reset again and again. And when Borrego finally lands a heavy shot late in the round, it is answered immediately, not with panic, but with crisp counters that preserve Musaev's narrative of control. And as the final bell rings, both men raise their gloves, neither certain, both spent, the crowd acknowledging the effort with sustained applause rather than explosive reaction, because they have witnessed something earned, and when the decision is read in Musaev's favor, it feels less like a victory and more like a conclusion, a recognition of sustained discipline over chaos, but also a validation of Borrego's value as a fighter who elevates every contest through courage and persistence. And as Musaev retains his titles, the lasting image is not dominance, but survival, not conquest, but composure. A fight remembered not for knockdowns or controversy, but for the rare satisfaction of seeing two styles test each other honestly over 10 demanding rounds, leaving nothing unexplored and nothing unearned. On a humid July night in Dushanbe, Tajikistan, inside the Tennis and Water Sports Palace, the kind of silence settles in that only serious boxing crowds know, not quiet, but expectant. The sound of people leaning forward rather than speaking, because this is not spectacle boxing. This is examination boxing. the kind where reputations don't get protected and legs don't get spared. And when Jose Miguel Borrego steps into the ring with that familiar southpaw posture and calm, unblinking stare, the energy shifts immediately. Because Borrego doesn't carry himself like a guest, he carries himself like a burden, the kind opponents realize they'll have to carry for 10 rounds whether they want to or not. A fighter from Aguascalientes who brings Mexico's pressure DNA, but strips it of recklessness, replacing chaos with intelligence, bringing 26 professional fights, 18 knockouts, and a history of turning IBA stages into places where lungs burn and ribs ache long after the bell. And yet, across from him stands a very different man with a very different philosophy. Vadim Musaev of Russia, undefeated, silver medalist at the World Championships, a fighter sculpted not in wars but in systems, a southpaw who doesn't advance emotionally but geometrically, who wins inches, angles, and seconds, whose idea of dominance is not breaking opponents but solving them. And from the opening instructions, it is clear this fight isn't about belts alone. The WBA Asia and Intercontinental titles hang in the background like decorations. This is about method, about whether precision can withstand inevitability, whether movement can stay sharp under constant demand. And as the referee steps out and the bell rings, Borrego takes exactly one half step forward, not rushing, not lunging, simply claiming ground, while Musaev circles immediately, light on his feet, testing distance, testing reactions, flicking out a probing jab that isn't meant to hurt, but to blind, to irritate, to establish tempo. And within the first 30 seconds, the story writes itself in motion. Borrego's head moving, shoulders rolling, eyes locked, absorbing the information while Musaev glides laterally, always giving a different look, never presenting a stationary target. And when Borrego finally commits to his first real attack, a measured right hook toward the body, Musaev is already gone, spinning out, answering with a light counter that lands not with force, but with message. And the crowd senses immediately that this will not be about explosions, but accumulation, not about moments, but minutes, because Borrego is not discouraged by being touched, and Musaev is not alarmed by being followed. And as the first round develops, Borrego continues his controlled advance, cutting angles rather than chasing, stepping laterally to his left to intercept Musaev's escape routes, while Musaev answers,